Yeah, 911, when you dial 911, there are special phone lines out there that the telephone companies have. We have a certain amount of 911 lines coming into this center. The Regional Dispatch Center is a large center, so we have a lot of dedicated 911 lines. If you call from a landline, which is, people think of them now as the old style phones on the walls in your house. When you dial 911 from one of those telephones, it goes straight to the phone company through copper hard lines and then straight to whatever dispatch center for the jurisdiction that you're located in. So if you're in Harrison Township and dial 911 from a landline phone, then it goes to the telephone company, and that telephone company circuitry will send that call directly to this center. And then when we get that call, it's going to tell us the address, it's going to tell us who the phone's registered in, the name, and it's going to tell us the callback number to that telephone. That is a perfect scenario for us. Even when we get those, we still ask, okay, where are you calling from, just to double check. But when we get a landline telephone 911 call, it usually gives us most of the information we need. What has happened, as everyone knows, is cellular telephones have changed the world of dispatching. A cellular telephone, when you dial 911, finds the closest tower you're at. And then it decides what dispatch center to send it to. If you're in the middle of the jurisdiction where that dispatch center is and it's not real busy as far as the telephone, people just on their telephones go, there's a great chance that it will end up at the correct 911 dispatch center. There are several factors that can change that, though.
How accurately, I guess, then, within, is it a block or a square mile, or when somebody calls from a cell phone, that you get their location that they're calling from?
It all depends, and that's where people get confused and don't understand. If you have an older style telephone that does not have GPS in it, and you call 911, all that's going to show up on the dispatcher screens where it shows the telephone calls coming in is a cell phone tower in the middle of a field, because that's where the 911 call's coming from. If you call 911 with a GPS-based phone, an iPhone, Android phone, you know, types of smartphones like that, it's getting much better. So there's a good chance that it can go as far as 50 meters, it can be as close as 3 meters to where you're actually at. It just depends on your service provider, the tower locations, and your type of technology you're using. So they are much better, but they're not perfect. We never rely on cellular telephone technology right now to know where you're at when you call 911 for help, because they're just not reliable enough for us. For every pinpoint cell phone call we get, we may get 10 that is being triangulated and there's a 300-meter circle up, or it's just that one cell phone in the field. So we're going to keep asking, where are you at, where are you at, are you sure where you're at? A perfect example is West 3rd Street at Diamond Mill. At that location, there are several different dispatch centers that control. There's Clay Township, New Lebanon, Jackson Township, Jefferson Township. When you dial 911 from around that area, your cell phone is going to look for the closest tower, because your cell phone providers don't want you on the phone with it ringing. So it's going to look for the closest tower. So if you're on the Jefferson Township side, but there's people on those cell phone towers, and there may not be anybody on the cell phone towers in the New Lebanon area, then it's going to go to that tower, which the 911 call will end up at the dispatch center who dispatches for New Lebanon. Then they're going to say, okay, where are you at? They're going to say, I'm here. Okay, hold on while I transfer your call, and then they're going to transfer them to us. And it's something that all the dispatch centers around here do with each other because of cell phones.
How frustrating is it as a dispatcher, as a supervisor, to know that this is happening and there's not really anything that can be done to fix it?
It can be very frustrating when somebody is in dire need of help. If you have a car crash, which we've had where the person said, I don't know where I'm at, and the cellular phone's not showing where they're at, and now there's a large search. You look at that diameter and say, okay, you start sending, the police in each jurisdiction start looking. It can be extremely frustrating. At that point, we're calling the cell phone provider saying, hey, this is an emergency. Can we try to locate the cell phone through your technology, things like that. And most of the time, people don't know exactly where they're at. And then the other part is where, they ask, okay, where are you calling from? Well, I'm at this location in Dayton. Well, they may not be in Dayton, they may be in Miami Township, they may be in Harrison Township, Jefferson Township, places like that. So that's why dispatchers keep asking, okay, where are you at? What city are you in? And it's just so that we can get help to them as quick as we can.
So if you guys can call an emergency as a cell phone provider and get that and ask them for it, why aren't they making it available as part of the technology that you guys have?
I don't know the exact technology that they're using to call what we call pinging a phone, but cell towers operate a little differently. For them to ping a phone, it takes they have software management systems that they can do that with, that just the average cell phone tower sending a 911 call does not use. And then the other part with that is it's not the quickest process. When you have to call the provider, get transferred to the right division, and then explain to them, because the cell phone tower is not just going to let anybody who asks for your location. So we have to prove that we're a law enforcement agency and that we're doing this, either we have a warrant to do it or that this is an extreme emergency and they have to provide that service.
And how long does that process take?
It depends on the company. Some companies are very responsive, and they have a whole division set up, and it goes pretty quick. And then sometimes, depending on the company that your cell phone's with, it can be a slow process. The thought process that you get what you pay for sometimes comes true when it comes to cellular technology.
Are there any recent examples? I know you mentioned a car crash where 911 couldn't find somebody, they didn't know where they were, and it ended up being a tragedy.
Not that I can think of. We have had, at the regional dispatch center, we've had several incidents like that, but we've been able to find their location before anything more serious could evolve.
Is there a time difference? I don't know if it adds a couple seconds, a couple minutes between trying to figure out where somebody is specifically versus them knowing where they are. Is there a vast difference in response time? There's
a big difference in response time. What the dispatcher is going to do is they're going to look at your location on the maps that they use, and the maps are great. They're detailed. There's going to be a circle. So they're going to start asking you questions. Okay, can you see this? Can you see this? And they're going to try to get them to help us at least get closer to where you're at. That takes time. Now, if you add on the fact that you have an emergency is why you dialed 911, it can be very frustrating to the person making the call. They're already probably panicking, and then the longer it takes the dispatcher to say, okay, we think you're here, we got help on the way, the more panicked they get. But that's where we run into problems, is people don't realize that most of the time it's not like what they see on TV, to where everything that happens, there's some agency sitting back going, here's exactly where they're at, here's this and that. It's not like that when it comes to cell phone technology at this point. Sometimes it can be, but most of the time it's more of a triangulation or an area where that call's coming from.
When we have apps like Uber, and even when you order food, sometimes they can, when I order an Uber, they can pick me up right at the corner where I'm standing at.
And you see them coming. The difference is the cell phone towers technology. These towers have been around for a while. The LTE towers, or 4G, however your company says, those are better. They will look for more cell phone towers. A cell phone tower can only hold so many cellular phone calls. So once it gets full or close to full, the cell phone signal is going to go out to different towers. LTE towers can send out more data than the old 3G towers. But the older towers are still there. Even the LTE towers aren't that pinpoint GPS accuracy to send them to every agency. And until everyone needs to upgrade their towers. Cell phone companies or businesses, they're just not going to go out and tear down thousands of cell phone towers. They have replied several years ago. If you had a cell phone company, you had to make it so that you could provide phase 1 and phase 2 data to dispatch centers. Phase 1 data is a callback number, which we didn't have several years ago. We didn't even get a callback number, so they had to provide that. And then phase 2 was longitude, latitude numbers to where we could try to find you. And they have been able to do that, but to be able to say that every tower can pinpoint where you're at, it's just not there yet.
Anything else you want to add?
The other area where people don't quite understand is cell phone companies know that the people that they provide services to, that their customers don't like sitting there not hearing anything. So another issue we have is when you dial, whether it's a 7 or a 10-digit non-emergency number or 911, and your phone starts ringing, well, there's a good chance that it keeps ringing because, once again, people don't like to hear dead air when they hit a number. So the phone starts ringing. It may take that phone a while to find an active tower, especially on a large crash. If you're on I-75 and there's a large crash and you want to dial 911, well, those towers around there are probably going to be busy. So sometimes we deal with that a lot too, that somebody called in and said, it took you this many rings before you answered my 911 call. And we have to either sit down with them or provide documentation, say, no, here's where this call came into the center, here's where it hit the lines downtown. But people need to realize that too, is as you dial a phone, even if you're just dialing a loved one or a friend, that if it takes a long time to ring, it's probably because that cell phone signal is out searching for an active tower that can take the call.
And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the importance of people being aware of their location when they're driving. Can you speak to that a little bit, at least like mile markers?
It's extremely important. Like I said, especially in a vehicle where you're moving from jurisdiction to jurisdiction so quickly, and we do. We are talking to somebody, we're thinking about what happened at work today, we're doing all these different things, and no matter how familiar we are with the area, we may not know the exact location. And if you have car trouble, you break down, if there's a traffic crash, then knowing exactly where you're at is extremely important. So it's always important to know what road you're on, and then once you're on that road, know what roads you passed, things like that, just that you should do in everyday driving. But once again, at this point in time, you can't rely on technology to always say where you're at. There are devices, there's things like OnStar and other services you can buy from vehicles that are pretty good because they're providing GPS tracking for your vehicle. Things like that help, and I'm sure there's many more out there. But as far as 911 cell phone data goes, it's getting better. It's just not as good as a lot of people think.